What if your billion-dollar empire collapsed overnight, and the only person left to save you was the janitor you never even saw? This isn't fiction. It's the story of Blake Watson, and the woman no one saw coming. He had money, power, control. She had none of that, but she had the one thing he didn't, a hidden past, and the skills to stop a war no one knew had started. But the real question? Who was Belinda Clark really? And how far would Apex Tech go to silence her? Would you bet your entire legacy on someone you didn't trust 24 hours ago? Stay with me, because this isn't just a story about betrayal. It's about what loyalty, power, and redemption really look like when the world stops pretending. Before we dive in, where are you watching from, and what kind of story do you want to see next? Drop it in the comments. And if stories like this pull you in and don't let go, go ahead, hit subscribe. I have another powerful one coming tomorrow, and you really don't want to miss it. Now, let's get into today's story. The red warning on Blake Watson's computer was just the beginning. It blinked once, then twice. A small alert box in the corner of his triple monitor setup, the kind of thing that usually meant a password needed updating or a software patch was due. Blake barely glanced at it. He was too busy reviewing the final documents for the Meridian acquisition. 3 years of negotiations, 18 months of due diligence, and now finally, the signature page sat open in front of him. One click, and Apex Technologies would become the largest fintech company in North America. His phone buzzed. A text from his CFO, "Market closes in 20. Sign it now." Blake moved his cursor toward the digital signature field. That's when the second alert appeared. Then a third. Then his screens went dark. What the? Blake jabbed at his keyboard. Nothing. He reached for his phone to call IT, but before he could dial, every monitor blazed back to life at once. Numbers, cascading down the screens like rain. Account balances, stock portfolios, encrypted transaction logs, all bleeding red. By the time he noticed, everything was already unraveling. Blake's heart slammed against his ribs. He clicked frantically through windows, each one revealing a new nightmare. Client accounts were emptying. Firewalls were down. Security protocols were being overridden in real time. No, his voice cracked. He pulled up the company's main ledger. The number at the top made his stomach drop. Apex Technologies' net assets, $247 million. It should have read $10.2 billion. He refreshed. The number dropped again. $189 million. Someone was draining the company. Live. Right in front of him. $10 billion. Gone in seconds. Blake's hands were shaking so badly he could barely hold his phone. He dialed the head of IT. Voicemail. He tried the CTO. Voicemail. Security. Voicemail. Everyone had gone home. Of course they had. It was 9:47 p.m. on a Friday. The building was a ghost town. He'd told everyone to take the night off, to celebrate early. Champagne was already chilling in the executive lounge for Monday's announcement. Now there was nothing left to announce. Blake stared at the screen, watching his life's work evaporate in real time. His breathing came shallow and fast. The walls of his corner office, floor-to-ceiling glass overlooking the Chicago skyline, suddenly felt like a cage. He thought about calling the FBI, the SEC, his lawyer. But what would he even say? I lost $10 billion while sitting at my desk? The media would destroy him. Investors would sue. The board would vote him out before sunrise. Blake Watson, Forbes 40 Under 40, TechCrunch Innovator of the Year, the man who'd built Apex from a dorm room idea into a billion-dollar empire, was about to become the biggest failure in corporate history. His vision blurred. He didn't know if it was tears or shock. The screen flickered one last time. Apex Technologies' net assets, $12 million. And still falling. Blake Watson sat frozen in his leather chair, staring at the numbers that kept shrinking like a countdown to oblivion. Everyone had gone home. Blake stayed behind to sign the biggest deal of his life. The irony wasn't lost on him. He'd sent his entire executive team home early, told them to rest up for the victory lap on Monday. He'd wanted this moment to himself, the quiet satisfaction of signing the Meridian deal alone, savoring the weight of what he'd accomplished. Now that quiet felt like a tomb. The 47th floor of the Apex Tower stretched out behind him, a sprawl of empty cubicles and darkened conference rooms. Normally, even at this hour, you could hear the hum of the server room, the distant ding of the elevator, the whir of the HVAC system. Tonight, there was nothing. The silence in the skyscraper was suffocating. Blake pushed back from his desk and stood on shaky legs. His mind raced through possibilities. A hack? A system malfunction? Corporate sabotage? None of it made sense. Apex had military-grade encryption, redundant firewalls, a cybersecurity team that cost $40 million a year. And yet, someone had walked right through it all. He paced to the window, pressing his forehead against the cold glass. Far below, the city lights glittered like scattered diamonds. Thousands of people down there had no idea that one of the biggest tech companies in the country was bleeding out in real time. Blake pulled out his phone again. His thumb hovered over his father's contact. No, he couldn't make that call. Not yet. His father had warned him about expanding too fast, about trusting too many people, about getting cocky. Blake had ignored every word. You think you're untouchable, son. Nobody is. He shoved the phone back in his pocket. A sound broke the silence. Faint. Rhythmic. Squeak, squeak, squeak. Blake's head snapped toward the hallway. His pulse quickened. Wheels. He wasn't alone after all. Blake moved toward the doorway, his dress shoes silent on the polished floor. The sound grew louder, a slow, steady roll of wheels across tile. Then he saw her. A woman in a gray janitor's uniform, pushing a yellow mop cart down the hallway. Her back was to him, her movements unhurried, almost meditative. A spray bottle hung from her belt. A pair of earbuds trailed down to a phone clipped to her waistband. Relief crashed over Blake, followed immediately by frustration. Of all the nights for the cleaning crew to be here, it had to be tonight. The last thing he needed was a witness to his breakdown. He stepped back into his office, hoping she'd pass by without noticing him. But the squeaking stopped. Blake froze. Slowly, he turned back toward the door. The woman stood in the hallway, maybe 20 feet away, staring directly at him. She'd pulled out her earbuds. Her dark eyes were sharp, focused, not the glazed-over look of someone just clocking hours. She wasn't moving. Just watching. Blake cleared his throat. You can skip this floor tonight. I'll be here a while." She didn't respond. Instead, she tilted her head slightly, her gaze drifting past him, toward the glowing monitors on his desk. Blake followed her line of sight. From where she stood, she could see the cascading red warnings, the plummeting numbers, the chaos frozen on his screens. When he looked back, she was already walking toward him. "Miss, I really don't." "That's a breach," she said quietly. Blake blinked. "What?" She stopped at the threshold of his office, eyes still locked on his computer. "That's a breach," she repeated, her voice calm but certain. "Active exploit. Probably a 0-day. You've got maybe 10 minutes before they ghost the logs and disappear." Blake's mouth went dry. "How do you," he stammered. "How do you even know what this is?" The woman finally looked at him. Really looked at him. Her response wasn't humble. "Because I used to build firewalls for the government." "Who do you think is behind the hack? Drop your theory below." Blake stared at her, his brain struggling to process what he'd just heard. She wore a gray janitor's uniform and pushed a mop cart. The uniform was standard issue, company logo stitched on the chest pocket, name tag pinned slightly crooked. Her hair was pulled back in a simple bun, streaks of silver running through black coils. She looked to be in her 50s, maybe early 60s. The kind of woman you'd pass in a hallway 100 times and never really see. But standing there now, framed in his doorway with the glow of dying monitors behind him, she didn't look invisible at all. She stepped inside without asking permission. Blake opened his mouth to protest, but something stopped him. Maybe it was the way she moved, purposeful, controlled. Or maybe it was the fact that she just identified a cybersecurity breach in 3 seconds flat. Her eyes scanned the crashing code like an old enemy. She walked past him, not toward his desk, but to the side monitor, the one displaying the raw data logs. Her head tilted as she read the cascading strings of text, her lips moving slightly as if translating a foreign language. "SQL injection through the payment gateway," she murmured. "Classic misdirection. They hit you from the front while the real drain happens in the back-end infrastructure." Blake's throat tightened. Who are you?" She didn't answer. Her eyes were locked on the screen, fingers twitching at her sides like she wanted to touch the keyboard but was holding herself back. "Your intrusion detection system should have caught this," she said, more to herself than to him. "Unless..." Her eyes narrowed. "Unless someone disabled it from the inside." The words hit Blake like a punch. Inside. An insider attack. Someone on his team. That's a breach, she whispered, finally turning to face him. The weight in her voice made it real. This wasn't a glitch. This wasn't bad luck. Someone had deliberately dismantled his company, and they'd had help. Blake sank into his chair, the adrenaline draining from his body all at once. His hands were still shaking. I don't understand, he muttered. How do you know all this? The woman pulled a small rag from her cart and wiped her hands, a reflex, maybe, or a way to buy time before answering. I worked in cybersecurity for 15 years, she said simply. NSA. Then private sector. Built defense systems for banks, hospitals, government agencies. She paused. Until I didn't. Why? Blake's voice cracked. Why are you cleaning floors? Her jaw tightened. For the first time, something flickered across her face. Something raw. Because nobody hires a black woman over 50 in tech, she said quietly. Doesn't matter what you built. Doesn't matter what you know. When you hit a certain age, a certain color, you become a ghost. The silence that followed was heavier than before. Blake thought about his own hiring practices. The executive team photos on the wall behind him. 12 faces, all under 40, all Ivy League, 11 of them white. He'd never thought about it before. Not really. What's your name? He asked. Belinda Clark. Blake looked at the monitors, then back at her. Can you stop this? Belinda's eyes returned to the screen. The numbers were still falling. $8 million. $7.2 million. Maybe, she said, if you let me try. Blake didn't hesitate. He stood up and stepped aside. Do it. Whatever you need. Belinda moved to the keyboard. Her fingers hovered over the keys for just a moment, like a pianist preparing for a long-forgotten song. Then she started typing, and the room came alive. Blake blinked. How do you even know what this is? He'd meant to ask it earlier, but now, watching her fingers fly across his keyboard with the speed and precision of a concert pianist, the question came out raw and desperate. Belinda didn't slow down. Her eyes darted between screens, reading lines of code faster than Blake could even process the words. Command prompt, she muttered. Network diagnostics. Traffic logs. Windows opened and closed in rapid succession. She wasn't guessing. She wasn't fumbling. Every keystroke was deliberate, like she'd walked this path 1,000 times before. Blake stood behind her, useless, watching a woman in a janitor's uniform do what his $40 million cybersecurity team couldn't. Who taught you this? He asked. Fort Meade, she said without looking up. NSA Cyber Defense Division. I was part of the team that built Foxhound, the intrusion detection system half the Fortune 500 still uses. Blake's stomach dropped. You built Foxhound? Part of it. Her tone was clipped, focused. I wrote the adaptive response protocols, the part that learns from attacks and evolves defenses in real time. She pulled up a new window, raw server data streaming in real time. Blake recognized it vaguely from quarterly security briefings, but it might as well have been hieroglyphics. To Belinda, it was a map. There, she said, pointing at a string of IP addresses. That's your bleed point. Someone opened a ghost pipeline through your client transaction servers. Every transfer you process is being skimmed, microseconds before it posts. Blake leaned closer. Can you close it? I can try. Her fingers never stopped moving. But whoever did this isn't some script kiddie in a basement. This is professional. Military grade. Blake's blood went cold. How would someone even get access? Belinda finally paused. She turned in his chair and looked up at him, her expression hard. Her response wasn't humble. Because I used to build firewalls for the government, she said. And I recognize the signature on this breach. This is NSA-level encryption bypass. The kind of thing you only learn in classified briefings. Blake took a step back. You think the government is attacking me? No. Belinda shook her head. I think someone who used to work for the government is. Or someone who bought the tools from someone who did. She turned back to the screen, her jaw tight. The dark web is full of former agents selling exploits for 6 figures. I've seen it before. Someone paid a lot of money to take you down, Mr. Watson. Blake felt his legs go weak. He gripped the edge of the desk to steady himself. Why? His voice was barely a whisper. "Why me?" "That," Belinda said, pulling up a new terminal window, "is the question you'd better start asking." For the next 3 minutes, Blake watched in stunned silence as Belinda dissected his company's infrastructure with surgical precision. She isolated corrupted subnets, rerouted traffic through backup servers, and rebuilt broken authentication layers line by line. She worked like a surgeon stopping a hemorrhage, fast, focused, no wasted motion. At one point, she stopped and looked at the mop cart in the corner of the room. "I need a USB drive," she said. Blake blinked. "What?" "A clean USB. Completely sterile. Nothing that's touched your network." Blake patted his pockets. "I don't." "Check your drawer." He did. In the back, behind old business cards and a forgotten flash drive from a 2019 conference, he found a sealed promotional USB, still in plastic wrap. He handed it to her. Belinda tore it open, plugged it in, and began transferring something, files Blake couldn't identify. "What are you doing?" "Copying their footprints," she said. "If I can isolate the signature of the breach, I can trace it back. Find out who hired the hacker." Blake's heart hammered. "Can you stop the bleeding?" Belinda's fingers paused over the keyboard. She stared at the screen for a long moment. Then she hit enter. The monitors flickered. One by one, the red warnings began to turn yellow. Then green. The cascading numbers slowed. Then stopped. Apex Technologies' net assets, $4,300,000. Blake exhaled for what felt like the first time in an hour. You stopped it." Belinda pulled the USB drive out and slipped it into her pocket. She stood up, wiping her hands again on that same rag. "For now," she said. "But whoever did this, they're still out there, and they're going to try again." Blake looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time. A woman who'd saved his company with nothing but a keyboard and 15 years of skills the world had decided to throw away. "Why are you helping me?" he asked. Belinda met his gaze. Her eyes were tired but steady. "Because I'm tired of being invisible." "What would you do if someone saved your life's work?" Comment below. Blake Watson had built an empire on calculated risks. Every major decision in his career had been vetted by lawyers, analysts, and board members. He'd never made a move without data, without consensus, without a safety net. Tonight, none of that mattered. Blake had two options: drown, or trust the stranger in front of him. He looked at Belinda Clark, this woman in a janitor's uniform who'd just done what his entire cybersecurity department couldn't. A woman whose name he hadn't known 10 minutes ago. A woman who claimed to have worked for the NSA but was now pushing a mop cart through his building. Every instinct screamed at him to call someone. His lawyer. The board. Hell, even the police. But the rational part of his brain, the part that had made him a billionaire, knew the truth. She was the only reason he still had a company at all. "The bleeding stopped," Blake said slowly, "but you said they'd try again." Belinda nodded. "They will. Probably within the hour, once they realize the pipeline's been cut. Next time, they'll come harder. Smarter." "Can you stop them?" She hesitated. "Maybe. But not from here. I need access to your core infrastructure. The server room. The mainframe. Everything." Blake's pulse quickened. The server room was the heart of Apex Technologies. Every piece of proprietary code, every client record, every financial transaction. Access to that room was restricted to 3 people: himself, his CTO, and the head of IT. Giving a stranger that kind of access was insane. It was also his only option. Blake walked to his desk and opened the bottom drawer. Inside, beneath a stack of contracts, was a small titanium keycard in a locked case. He entered the 6-digit code and pulled it out. The master key. It wasn't just for the server room. It opened every secure door in the building. Every vault. Every executive office. With this card, Belinda could access files worth billions, trade secrets that competitors would kill for. He held it for a moment, feeling the weight of the decision. Trust her, and risk everything. Don't trust her, and lose everything anyway. Blake looked up. Belinda was watching him, her expression unreadable. "If I give you this," he said quietly, "I'm putting my entire company in your hands." "I know. You could steal everything. Sell it. Disappear." "I could. Why shouldn't I?" Belinda's eyes didn't waver. "Because if I wanted to rob you, Mr. Watson, I would have done it years ago. I've been cleaning this building for 3 years. I've walked past your unlocked offices, your open laptops, your careless executives 1,000 times. She paused. I didn't come here tonight to take from you. I came here to work. Same as I do every night. Blake felt something crack inside his chest. Shame maybe, or respect. Probably both. He stepped forward and held out the keycard. He gave her the master key. Do what you have to do. Belinda took the card, her fingers brushing his for just a moment. She looked down at it, then back up at him. You won't regret this, she said. I'd better not, Blake replied, trying to inject some humor into his voice. It came out shaky. Belinda slipped the keycard into her pocket and turned toward the door. Blake followed. Wait, he said. What do you need me to do? She glanced back. Stay close. I might need your biometrics for secondary authentication. That's it. That's it. She paused at the doorway. Oh, and Mr. Watson? Yeah. Stop calling your CTO. Blake froze. What? Belinda's voice dropped. You've tried calling him 4 times tonight. He's not answering. That's not a coincidence. The implication hit Blake like a freight train. You think Andre? I don't think anything yet, Belinda cut him off. But the breach came from inside your network. Someone with admin privileges. There are only 5 people in this company with that level of access. Blake's mind raced. Andre Barry. His CTO. His friend. They'd started Apex together in a cramped apartment 8 years ago. I need proof before I accuse anyone, Blake said firmly. Then let's go find it. Together, they descended to the server room, cold, humming, half dead. The elevator ride down was silent. Blake watched the floor numbers drop. 47, 32, 18. B3. Basement level 3. The place most employees didn't even know existed. The doors opened with a soft chime. The temperature dropped immediately. Blake's breath misted in the air. The corridor ahead was narrow, lit by harsh fluorescent strips that buzzed like dying insects. Exposed pipes ran along the ceiling, dripping condensation. Belinda stepped out first, the master keycard already in her hand. Blake followed, his expensive loafers splashing through shallow puddles on the concrete floor. He'd been down here maybe twice in the last year, once for a board tour, once during a safety inspection. The server room wasn't glamorous. It wasn't the part of the company he showed investors. But it was the part that mattered most. They reached a reinforced steel door at the end of the hall. A biometric scanner glowed red beside it. Belinda swiped the keycard, and the scanner turned yellow. Your turn, she said. Blake pressed his thumb against the glass. A laser swept across his print. The door unlocked with a heavy thunk. Cold air rushed out, carrying the smell of ozone and recycled atmosphere. Belinda pushed the door open and stepped inside. The server room stretched out before them, rows upon rows of black metal racks, each one humming with the quiet fury of 1,000 processors. LED lights blinked in rhythmic patterns, green, blue, amber. The walls were lined with cable management systems that looked like the nervous system of some massive mechanical organism. Normally, this room was alive, a symphony of whirring fans and clicking drives. Tonight, it sounded wrong. Some of the racks were silent. Dark. Entire sections of the room had gone quiet, like organs shutting down one by one. Jesus, Blake whispered. Belinda was already moving. She walked down the main aisle, her eyes scanning the status lights on each rack. Her fingers moved like muscle memory, tracing cables, checking connections, reading error codes on tiny LCD screens. This one's been rerouted, she said, tapping a server near the back. Traffic's being redirected through an external node. Can you fix it? Not yet. I need to see the whole picture first. She moved to a workstation in the corner, a single desk with 3 monitors and a keyboard. Blake hadn't even known it was there. She sat down, swiped the keycard again, and the monitors blazed to life. Lines of code began scrolling across the screens. Belinda's fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling up system logs, traffic reports, access histories. Blake stood behind her, trying to follow along, but it was like watching someone speak a language he'd never learned. There, Belinda said, pointing at a timestamp. 11:47 p.m., 3 days ago. Someone initiated a system-wide privilege escalation. They gave themselves God mode access to everything. Who? Belinda pulled up the user log. The name that appeared made Blake's blood run cold. User, A.Berry access level, administrator action, privilege escalation approved. Andre. Blake's legs felt weak. He gripped the back of Belinda's chair. That doesn't mean. It doesn't prove anything, Belinda agreed. But it's a thread. And threads lead somewhere. She kept typing, digging deeper into the logs. Her face was illuminated by the glow of the monitors, her expression intense and focused. Minutes passed. The only sounds were the hum of dying servers and the rhythmic clack of keys. Then Belinda stopped. "Oh no," she whispered. "What?" She pointed at the screen. "There. Hidden partition. Someone's been siphoning data for weeks. Client info. Financial records. Proprietary algorithms. It's all been copied to an external server." Blake felt his chest tighten. "Where?" "I don't know yet. The trail's been scrambled. But..." She pulled up another window. "I can follow the breadcrumbs. It'll take time, but I can find it." Blake looked around the room, at the failing servers, the dark racks, the blinking warning lights. His company was bleeding out, and the knife had been held by someone he trusted. Hope rebooted in fragments. One server came back online. Then another. Belinda was rerouting systems, patching holes, rebuilding defenses in real time. Green lights began to outnumber the red ones. Blake watched her work, and for the first time since the nightmare began, he felt something other than panic. He felt hope. "How long will this take?" he asked. Belinda didn't look up. "Hours. Maybe all night." Blake pulled up a second chair and sat down beside her. "Then I'm staying." Belinda glanced at him, surprised. "You don't have to." "Yes," Blake said firmly. "I do." She nodded once, then turned back to the screen. And together, in the cold heart of Apex Tech, they started to fight back. Have you ever had to trust someone you just met? Tell me about it in the comments. The hours blurred together in the frozen silence of the server room. Blake lost track of time somewhere around 1 a.m. His eyes burned from staring at screens he barely understood. His back ached from the cheap plastic chair. His fingers were numb from the relentless cold. But he didn't leave. Belinda worked like a woman possessed. Her focus never wavered. She moved between terminals, traced cables through the labyrinth of server racks, typed commands that rewrote entire security protocols on the fly. Every so often, she'd mutter something under her breath. Technical jargon Blake couldn't follow, and another section of the system would flicker back to life. "Talk to me," Blake said at one point, desperate to understand. "What are you doing?" Belinda didn't look up from the screen. "I'm rebuilding your network topology from the inside out. Whoever attacked you didn't just breach your system, they rewired it. Changed the architecture so they could come and go as they pleased. Like, leaving a door open? More like replacing your entire security system with one they control." She pulled up a diagram that looked like a spiderweb. "See these nodes? Those are ghost access points. Back doors. I'm closing them one by one and replacing them with clean infrastructure. How long will that take?" "As long as it takes." Blake leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. The weight of the night was crushing him. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the numbers falling on his monitor. $10 billion. Gone. "I should have seen this coming," he said quietly. Belinda's fingers paused over the keyboard. "You can't predict betrayal, Mr. Watson. That's why it works. I trusted him. Andre and I built this company together. Then he'll have to answer for that." She resumed typing. "But right now, we focus on saving what's left." Blake nodded, even though she wasn't looking at him. At 2:47 a.m., Belinda stood up abruptly and walked to the far end of the room. Blake followed, his legs stiff from sitting. She stopped in front of a server rack that had been completely dark. She pulled a flashlight from her cart, the same cart she'd been pushing when this nightmare began, and shone it on a tangle of disconnected cables. "This is your primary authentication server," she said. "It's been manually unplugged. Someone physically came down here and pulled the cables." Blake's stomach dropped. "When?" "According to the logs, Wednesday, 2 days before the breach." Blake thought back. Wednesday. He'd been in New York meeting with investors. Andre had been here, in charge. Belinda crouched down and began reconnecting cables with swift, practiced movements. "Once this comes back online, Your entire security framework should stabilize. Should. Nothing's guaranteed, Mr. Watson. She connected the final cable and stood up. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the server hummed to life. At 3:14 a.m., green lights blinked to life. One by one, across the entire room, the server racks that had been dark began to glow. Status indicators shifted from red to amber to green. Fans whirred back into rhythm. The dead spaces in the room filled with sound again, the sound of systems waking up, rebooting, remembering what they were supposed to do. Blake watched in stunned silence as the room transformed. Systems once dead were breathing again. Belinda returned to the main terminal and pulled up the company's asset dashboard. The number at the top made Blake's breath catch. Apex Technologies' net assets, $4,287 million. It wasn't $10 billion. But it was something. It was survivable. How? Blake's voice cracked. I rerouted the stolen assets through a recovery protocol, Belinda explained, her tone matter of fact. About 40% was already liquidated and moved offshore. That's gone. But the rest was still in transit, stuck in escrow accounts waiting for confirmation. I reversed the transactions before they could finalize. Blake stared at the screen, his vision blurring. $4 billion. She'd pulled $4 billion back from the edge of oblivion. She'd saved it. All of it. Well, not all of it. But enough. Enough to rebuild. Enough to survive. Enough to fight back. Blake turned to Belinda. She was shutting down the terminal, organizing her notes, moving with the same quiet efficiency she'd had when she walked into his office pushing a mop cart. You just saved my company, Blake said, his voice thick with emotion. Belinda looked at him, her expression unreadable. I did my job. No. Blake shook his head. You did more than that. You did what an entire department couldn't do. What I couldn't do. She didn't respond. Just stood there waiting. Blake realized in that moment that he couldn't let her walk away. Couldn't let her go back to pushing a mop cart, back to being invisible. He took a breath. What do you want, Ms. Clark? Belinda's eyes narrowed slightly. What do you mean? I mean, what do you want? Money? A bonus? Name it. For the first time that night, Belinda smiled. It was small, tired, but real. I want to be seen, Mr. Watson, she said quietly. I want to do the work I was trained to do. The work I'm good at. Blake nodded slowly. Then let's make that happen. By the time they rode the elevator back up to the 47th floor, the sun was beginning to rise. Pale orange light spilled through the skyscraper's windows, painting the empty office in shades of gold and amber. Blake's body was screaming for sleep, but his mind was racing. They walked back to his office in silence. Belinda's mop cart sat where she'd left it, a strange relic of a different world, one that existed just 6 hours ago. Blake collapsed into his chair. Belinda remained standing, her arms crossed, her expression neutral. Sit, Blake said, gesturing to the chair across from him. Please. She hesitated, then sat. Blake leaned forward, elbows on his desk. I need to know something. Why didn't you ever apply for a position here? In cybersecurity. Belinda's jaw tightened. I did. 3 years ago. When I first started cleaning this building. Blake blinked. What happened? I submitted my resume through the online portal. Got an automated rejection in 48 hours. I tried again 6 months later. Same result. She paused. The third time, I walked my resume directly to HR. Handed it to a woman at the front desk. And she looked at me in my uniform, smiled, and said, We're not hiring for janitorial services right now. Belinda's voice was steady, but Blake could hear the edge beneath it. I told her I was applying for the cybersecurity team. She looked me up and down and said, Oh honey, I don't think that's the right fit. Blake felt something twist in his chest. I'm sorry, he said. Belinda shrugged. You didn't hire me. You didn't reject me. You just never saw me. She met his gaze. None of you did. Blake sat back in his chair, the weight of her words sinking in. He thought about all the diversity initiatives, the corporate statements, the inclusion workshops. All of it hollow. All of it performative. Because when a woman with 15 years of NSA experience handed her resume to his company, they'd thrown it away without a second glance. Blake didn't ask for her resume. He opened his desk drawer, pulled out a blank company letterhead, and began writing by hand. His handwriting was messy from exhaustion, but the words were clear. Effective immediately, Belinda Clark is appointed Chief of Cybersecurity for Apex Technologies, reporting directly to the CEO. Full executive authority over all digital infrastructure, security protocols, and threat response. Salary and benefits commensurate with C-suite leadership. He signed it, dated it, and slid it across the desk. He gave her a title, Chief of Cybersecurity. Belinda stared at the paper for a long moment. Then she looked up at Blake. "You don't even know if I'm qualified," she said carefully. "You just saved a $4 billion company with a USB drive and 6 hours of work," Blake replied. "I think you're qualified. Your board won't approve this. I don't care. Your CTO, assuming it wasn't him, will be furious. Let him be." Belinda picked up the paper, reading it again. "This is real. As real as it gets." She set the paper down and met his eyes. "You know this will cause problems." "I know. Your executives will push back. Some of them will resent me. Some of them will try to undermine me." Blake nodded. "Probably. And if Andre really is behind this..." She trailed off. "Then this war is just beginning." And the war quietly began. Blake stood up and extended his hand across the desk. "Welcome to Apex Technologies, Ms. Clark. For real this time." Belinda stood as well. She looked at his hand for a moment, then shook it firmly. "I won't let you down," she said. "I know you won't." Belinda released his hand and picked up the appointment letter, folding it carefully and slipping it into her pocket, right next to the USB drive that held the evidence of the breach. "First order of business?" Blake asked. Belinda's expression hardened. "We find out who did this, and we make sure they never do it again." Blake nodded. "Agreed." As Belinda turned to leave, Blake called after her. "Ms. Clark." She paused at the door. "Thank you," Blake said, "for everything." Belinda gave him a small, tired smile. "Thank me when we catch them, Mr. Watson." Then she walked out, leaving the mop cart behind. Blake watched her go, then turned to the window. The city was waking up. People were starting their commutes, grabbing coffee, completely unaware that one of the biggest tech companies in the country had almost died overnight. His phone buzzed. A text from his CFO, "You okay? Couldn't sleep. Call me." Blake ignored it. Instead, he pulled up his company directory and began drafting an email to the executive team. Emergency meeting. Monday, 9 a.m. attendance mandatory. He hit send. The battle had just begun. If you had the power to hire anyone based purely on skill, no resume, no degree, no pedigree, would you? Comment below. Monday morning arrived with the weight of a reckoning. Blake hadn't slept more than 4 hours all weekend. He'd spent Saturday and Sunday in his home office, reviewing security logs, preparing his defense, and rehearsing the conversation he was about to have. By 8:45 a.m., the executive conference room on the 45th floor was filled with tension thick enough to cut. 12 executives sat around the mahogany table, vice presidents, department heads, C-suite leadership. They'd all received Blake's cryptic emergency meeting notice. They'd all arrived with questions. Andre Barry sat at the far end of the table, arms crossed, his expression unreadable. He was dressed impeccably as always, tailored navy suit, crisp white shirt, gold cufflinks. His dark skin was smooth, his beard trimmed to perfection. He looked like a man who had nothing to hide. Blake stood at the head of the table, his laptop open in front of him. "Thank you all for coming," he began. "I know this is unusual." Unusual. The CFO, Margaret Chun, cut him off. "Blake, you disappeared all weekend. We've been trying to reach you. What's going on?" Blake took a breath. "Friday night, Apex was hit with a cyber attack. Someone breached our systems and attempted to drain the company's assets." The room erupted. "What? How much? Why weren't we informed?" Blake held up a hand. "The breach was stopped. We recovered approximately 40% of what was taken. We're secure now, or as secure as we can be." "Who did this?" Andre spoke for the first time, his voice calm but firm. "And why am I just hearing about it now?" Blake met his gaze. "Because the breach came from inside. Someone with administrative access." The room went silent. Andre's expression didn't change. You think someone on this team? I'm not accusing anyone yet, Blake said quickly. But we need to be transparent. The threat is real, and it's ongoing. Who stopped it? Margaret asked. Blake glanced at the door. That's why you're all here. He walked to the conference room entrance and opened it. When Belinda walked into the Monday meeting, jaws dropped. She wore a charcoal gray pantsuit, simple but professional. Her hair was styled differently, pulled back in a sleek bun. She carried a leather briefcase and walked with the quiet confidence of someone who'd earned her place. But Blake could see the recognition on their faces. The confusion. The disbelief. Isn't that the cleaning lady? Someone whispered. Blake gestured to an empty chair. Everyone, this is Belinda Clark. As of this morning, she is Apex's new chief of cybersecurity. The room exploded again. You've got to be kidding. Blake, what the hell? This is insane. CTO Andre Barry wasn't impressed. He stood up slowly, his chair scraping against the floor. His voice cut through the chaos like a blade. A janitor, in charge? The room fell silent. Andre's eyes locked on Belinda, then shifted to Blake. You're telling me that you've appointed someone with zero credentials, zero vetting, zero board approval, to run our cybersecurity? She has credentials, Blake said firmly. 15 years with the NSA. She built Foxhound, the intrusion detection system half this industry uses. Andre's jaw tightened. Then why was she cleaning our floors? Because no one would hire her, Blake shot back. And Friday night, while you weren't answering your phone, she saved this company. Andre's expression darkened. I wasn't answering because I was at my daughter's recital. Something you'd know if you bothered to check the company calendar. Blake faltered. He hadn't checked. But sure, Andre continued, his voice dripping with sarcasm. Let's just hand the keys to the kingdom to someone we know nothing about. What could possibly go wrong? Margaret leaned forward. Blake, I understand you're grateful, but Andre has a point. We need proper vetting. Background checks. Board approval. We can't just. I already have board approval, Blake lied. He'd deal with the board later. And Ms. Clark has full authority to audit every system, every employee, every access point in this company. Including yours, Andre. Andre's eyes flashed. Are you accusing me of something? I'm saying we were breached from the inside, Blake said evenly. And until we know who's responsible, everyone is under scrutiny. The two men stared at each other across the table. Belinda finally spoke. Her voice was calm, measured. I understand your concerns, she said, looking around the room. I would have them too. But right now, your company is vulnerable. Whoever attacked you on Friday is still out there. They're still in your system. And if we don't act fast, they'll try again. How do you know they're still in the system? Andre challenged. Belinda met his gaze. Because I've spent the last 72 hours analyzing the breach. And I found something. She opened her briefcase and pulled out a tablet. With a few taps, she mirrored its display onto the conference room screen. Lines of code appeared. Transaction logs. Access records. This, Belinda said, pointing at a timestamp, is a ghost access point. It was created 3 weeks ago. It's still active. Someone is still monitoring this company's network in real time. The room was deathly quiet. Who? Margaret whispered. Belinda's eyes swept across the executives. That's what I'm here to find out. Andre sat back down, his expression unreadable. Blake looked around the table. Anyone who has a problem with Ms. Clark's appointment can submit their resignation by end of business today. Otherwise, you will cooperate fully with her investigation. Are we clear? No one spoke. Good, Blake said. Meeting adjourned. The executives filed out slowly, shooting glances at Belinda as they passed. Andre was the last to leave. He stopped at the door and looked back at Blake. You're making a mistake, he said quietly. Then he was gone. Belinda stood beside Blake, watching the empty doorway. That went well, she said dryly. Blake exhaled. It's going to get worse before it gets better. I know. You still want this job? Belinda smiled slightly. More than ever. If you think this ends with a miracle, think again. Because the reason Patty was rejected had nothing to do with science. Subscribe. What happens next will make you question everything. Belinda's new office was on the 46th floor, right between Blake's executive suite and the IT department. It had previously belonged to the VP of Operations, who'd been quietly relocated after Blake made it clear this wasn't optional. The space was sparse. A desk, 2 monitors, a window overlooking the city. Belinda didn't need much. What she needed was access. And now she had it. For the next 3 days, Belinda lived in the code. She audited every system, every server, every line of access logs. She cross-referenced timestamps, tracked IP addresses, and mapped the digital footprints of everyone who touched the network in the last month. Blake checked in twice a day, but mostly stayed out of her way. He trusted her. It was strange, that trust, built in a single night, forged in crisis. But Belinda's gut said something still wasn't right. She'd closed the breach. She'd recovered the assets. The system was stable. But there was a shadow. A whisper in the code. Something that didn't fit. On Wednesday afternoon, she found it. She was reviewing access logs from the week before the breach when she noticed an anomaly. A series of logins from an IP address that didn't match any known company device. The logins were brief, seconds, sometimes less than a minute. Just long enough to check something. To verify something. Belinda traced the IP. It bounced through 3 proxy servers before hitting a dead end in Eastern Europe. Professional. Very professional. But the login credentials. She pulled up the user profile. User, A.Barry. Andre again. Belinda frowned. This was too obvious. Too sloppy. Andre was a lot of things, but he wasn't sloppy. She dug deeper. The login pattern was wrong. Andre typically accessed the system during business hours, 8 a.m. to 7 p.m., consistent with his work schedule. But these ghost logins? They happened at 2 a.m., 4 a.m., times when Andre was provably elsewhere. She cross-referenced his security badge swipes. On the nights of the ghost logins, Andre's badge showed him leaving the building at 6 p.m. and not returning until the next morning. Someone was using his credentials. A shadow was still in the system. Belinda leaned back in her chair, her mind racing. If someone had stolen Andre's login, they'd need access to his computer. Or his phone. Or... She pulled up Andre's access history again, this time looking at where the logins originated. Most came from his office workstation. A few from his laptop. But one, just one, came from a different device entirely. A tablet registered to the IT department. Belinda's pulse quickened. She pulled up the IT department's device registry. 73 tablets in circulation, assigned to field technicians and system administrators. She filtered by the specific device ID from Andre's ghost login. 1 result. Device, Apex tab 041 assigned to Marcus Webb, Systems Administrator. Belinda didn't recognize the name. She pulled up his employee file. Marcus Webb, 28 years old. Hired 2 years ago. Degree from a state school. No red flags in his background check. Mid-level admin with access to everything. And it had a familiar fingerprint. Belinda opened a new window and pulled up the breach signature, the unique code pattern left behind by the attack. Every hacker had a style, a fingerprint. Little quirks in how they wrote exploits, how they navigated systems. She'd seen this one before. Years ago. In a classified briefing at Fort Meade. It was NSA grade. But not just any NSA tool. This was from a specific operation, a black budget program that had been shut down after it was compromised. Belinda's blood ran cold. She knew this signature because she'd helped build the defenses against it. Which meant whoever was behind this wasn't just a hacker. They were someone who'd had access to classified government exploits. Someone like her. Belinda grabbed her phone and called Blake. He picked up on the first ring. Talk to me. We need to meet. Now. What did you find? Not over the phone. Her voice was tight. Your office. 5 minutes. She hung up before he could respond. Belinda grabbed the tablet, her notes, and the USB drive she'd kept hidden in her desk drawer, the one with the original breach evidence. As she stood up, her computer monitor flickered. Just once. Then a message appeared in the center of the screen. Plain text. No sender. You're getting close. Stop now. Belinda's heart hammered. She spun around, looking at the empty office behind her. No one was there. She looked back at the screen. The message was gone. But the threat was clear. Someone was watching her, and they knew exactly what she'd found. What's the creepiest warning you've ever received? Real or online? Comment below. Belinda stood frozen in her office, staring at the blank screen where the message had been. Her hand hovered over her phone, every instinct screaming at her to run, to call security, to do something. But she forced herself to breathe, to think. Panicking wouldn't help. Evidence would. She grabbed her tablet and headed for Blake's office, moving quickly but not running. Running would draw attention. And right now, she couldn't afford that. Blake was waiting when she arrived, his door already open. "What's going on?" he asked, concern etched across his face. Belinda closed the door behind her and locked it. She pulled the blinds down over the glass walls. "Someone just sent me a warning," she said. "On my computer. Told me to stop digging." Blake's expression hardened. "When?" "2 minutes ago." "Did you trace it?" "It disappeared before I could. But that's not the point." She set her tablet on his desk and pulled up her findings. "The point is that they're watching. They know what I'm looking for, which means they're still inside the system." Blake leaned over the desk, studying the screen. "What did you find?" "Late-night logins. Ghost data transfers." Belinda's fingers moved across the tablet, pulling up logs, timestamps, evidence she'd compiled over the last 3 days. Someone's been siphoning data for weeks. Small transfers. Careful. Professional. From where? Everywhere. Client databases. Proprietary algorithms. Financial records. They've been building a complete mirror of your company's digital infrastructure. Blake's jaw clenched. How is that even possible? We have monitoring systems. Alerts. Redundancies. They disabled them, Belinda said. Or rather, they reprogrammed them. Made the system think the transfers were legitimate. Authorized. By who? Belinda hesitated. This was the moment. The moment everything changed. She followed the trail back to Andre. She pulled up the final piece of evidence, a network map showing the origin points of every unauthorized transfer. They all traced back to a single node, a single workstation. Andre Barry's office computer. Blake stared at the screen, his face draining of color. "No," he whispered. "No, that can't be right." "I triple-checked it," Belinda said quietly. "The credentials, the access points, the timing. It all points to him." "Andre wouldn't," Blake's voice cracked. "He's been with me since the beginning. We built this company together. He's my friend." "I know. There has to be another explanation. Someone could have stolen his credentials. Framed him." "I thought that too." Belinda pulled up another window. "But look at this. These transfers weren't just automated. Someone was manually approving them, making decisions, covering tracks. This wasn't a bot. This was a person." Blake sank into his chair, his hands covering his face. Belinda gave him a moment, then continued. "There's more. The breach signature matches a classified NSA exploit from a program that was shut down 5 years ago. Only a handful of people would know how to use it." Blake looked up. "Are you saying Andre worked for the NSA?" "No." Belinda shook her head. "I'm saying someone with NSA training is helping him. Or he's helping them. Either way." She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. The company's own CTO was the traitor. Blake stood abruptly and walked to the window, staring out at the city below. His reflection in the glass looked broken. 8 years, he said, his voice hollow. 8 years we've been partners. I was at his wedding. I'm godfather to his daughter." "I'm sorry," Belinda said. "Are you sure?" "Absolutely certain." Belinda pulled up one final file, a video log from the building's security cameras. It showed Andre entering the server room at 11:43 p.m. on the Wednesday before the breach. The same night someone had physically unplugged the primary authentication server. He was alone. No one else had badge access during that time window. Blake watched the video in silence. When it ended, he turned away from the window. "What do we do?" he asked. "We set a trap," Belinda said. "We feed him false information. See if he takes the bait. If he does, we'll have proof. Real, undeniable proof." Blake nodded slowly. "And if he doesn't?" "Then we dig deeper. But Blake. Belinda's voice softened. You need to prepare yourself. The evidence is already overwhelming. This isn't a question of if anymore. It's a question of why. Blake closed his eyes. He's going to destroy everything we built. Not if we stop him first. Blake opened his eyes, and Belinda saw something change in them. The grief was still there, but beneath it was something harder. Something colder. Resolve. Tell me what you need, he said. Blake didn't want to believe it. 8 years of loyalty? He'd spent the rest of Wednesday in a fog. He'd gone through the motions, answered emails, attended calls, smiled at employees in the hallway. But his mind was somewhere else. Replaying memories. Searching for signs he'd missed. Andre introducing him to investors who'd funded Apex's Series A. Andre working 80-hour weeks during the company's first product launch. Andre talking him down from the ledge when a major client threatened to walk. Andre standing beside him at every milestone. How could that man be a traitor? But the evidence was undeniable. Thursday morning, Blake and Belinda met in his office before sunrise. The city outside was still dark, the building empty except for a handful of early shift security guards. Belinda had brought coffee. Blake hadn't touched his. Here's the plan, she said, spreading documents across his desk. We create a fake financial report. Something big. Something Andre would want to steal. Like what? An acquisition target. A company Apex is supposedly planning to buy. We make it look legitimate. Board approval, financial projections, the works. Then we plant it in the system where only Andre has access. Blake frowned. And if he takes it? Then we track where it goes. Who he sends it to. That'll give us the buyers. The people behind this. And if he doesn't take it? Then we're wrong about him. And we start over. Blake looked at the documents. Everything was meticulously prepared. Belinda had thought of every detail. How long will this take? He asked. 72 hours. Maybe less if he's desperate. Blake nodded slowly. Do it. Belinda started to gather the papers, but Blake stopped her. Wait. If we're wrong about this, if Andre is innocent, we'll have destroyed our friendship for nothing. I know. And if we're right? Blake's voice dropped. If we're right, I'll have to turn in my best friend. Belinda met his gaze. Would you rather let him destroy your company? Blake didn't answer. He didn't have to. By Friday afternoon, the trap was set. Belinda had created a detailed acquisition proposal for a fictional AI startup called Helix Dynamics. On paper, it was worth $800 million. The fake board approval memo was dated and signed. The financial projections looked flawless. She planted the files in a secure folder on the company's internal server, one that required CTO-level access to view. Then she added a tracer. A tiny piece of code that would ping her the moment anyone opened those files. All they had to do now was wait. Blake tried to act normal. He had lunch with the executive team. He reviewed quarterly reports. He even stopped by Andre's office to chat about the upcoming product launch. Andre seemed fine. Normal. Maybe a little stressed, but no more than usual. If he was hiding something, he was hiding it perfectly. That night, Blake stayed late at the office. Belinda was in her own office 2 floors down, monitoring the network. At 9:47 p.m., Blake's phone buzzed. A text from Belinda. He just accessed the files. Blake's heart stopped. Another text. Downloading now. Blake stood up, his legs unsteady. This was real. Andre had taken the bait. His phone buzzed again. File transferred to external device. Tracking now. Blake's hands were shaking. He wanted to call Andre. To confront him. To demand an explanation. But Belinda had been clear. Let him finish. We need to see where it goes. 10 minutes later, Belinda appeared in his doorway. Her face was grim. He sent it, she said. Encrypted email to an offshore account. I'm tracing the recipient now, but it'll take time. Blake sank into his chair. It's really him. I'm sorry. Blake's phone rang. He looked at the screen. Andre. Blake and Belinda locked eyes. Answer it, she whispered. Act normal. Blake took a breath and answered. Hey man. What's up? Andre's voice was casual. Too casual. Hey, you still at the office? Yeah. Burning the midnight oil. You. Just leaving. Listen, I was thinking about that Helix Dynamics opportunity. The AI startup. Looks interesting. Blake's blood went cold. How did you? Saw the memo on the internal server, Andre said smoothly. Thought we should discuss it. Maybe grab lunch tomorrow. Blake forced himself to sound normal. Sure. Yeah. Let's do that. Great. See you Monday. Andre hung up. Blake set the phone down. His hand was trembling. And Belinda was being watched. She felt it now. The weight of invisible eyes. Someone monitoring her movements, her searches, her communications. She walked to the window and looked out at the darkened building across the street. A single light was on. Top floor. A figure stood in the window. Watching. Belinda's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You should have stopped when I warned you. If you knew someone was watching you right now, what would you do? Comment your move. Belinda stared at the text message, her reflection ghosting across the screen. Her pulse hammered in her ears, but she forced herself to stay calm. To think. She looked back at the window across the street. The figure was gone. The light still burned, but the silhouette had vanished. Her phone buzzed again. Stop digging. Or else. That was the moment fear got real. Not the abstract fear of being wrong, or of corporate politics, or even of losing her job. This was primal. The kind of fear that comes when you realize someone is willing to hurt you to protect their secrets. Belinda's fingers moved automatically. She took screenshots of the messages, forwarded them to a secure email account, then deleted the texts from her phone. If something happened to her, there would be evidence. She walked back to Blake's office. He was still sitting in his chair, staring at nothing. We have a problem, she said. Blake looked up. Another one? She showed him her phone, the forwarded screenshots. Blake's expression darkened as he read. They're threatening you. Yes. Who? I don't know. But they know I'm getting close. Belinda pocketed her phone. Blake, this is bigger than Andre. He's not working alone. Someone with serious resources is backing him. Someone willing to kill to keep this quiet. Kill. Blake stood abruptly. Belinda, if you're in danger. We're both in danger, she corrected. The moment you gave me this job, you became a target too. Blake ran a hand through his hair. We need to call the police. The FBI. Someone. And tell them what? That we suspect an inside job but have no proof? That I got threatening texts from a burner number? Belinda shook her head. They'll open an investigation that'll take months. Meanwhile, whoever's behind this will disappear. And your company will bleed out. So what do? We finish the trap. Tomorrow night. We catch Andre in the act, and we make him talk. Blake looked at her for a long moment. You're not going home tonight, are you? No. Belinda's voice was firm. I'm staying here. Safer than being out there alone. I'll stay too. Blake. I'm not leaving you here by yourself, Blake said. End of discussion. Belinda left Blake's office just after midnight. The building was silent except for the hum of ventilation systems and the distant ping of elevator bells. She took the elevator down to the parking garage, intending to grab her laptop bag from her car. She'd left it there that morning, not expecting to pull an all-nighter. The garage was dimly lit, shadows pooling between concrete pillars. Her footsteps echoed as she walked toward her car, a 10-year-old Honda Civic parked in the employees section. She clicked the key fob. The locks chirped. As she reached for the door handle, something made her stop. An instinct. A feeling. Belinda crouched down and looked under the car. Her blood turned to ice. Someone had planted a tracker under her car. A small black device, no bigger than a deck of cards, was magnetically attached to the undercarriage near the rear axle. A tiny LED blinked red in the darkness. GPS tracker. Professional grade. Belinda's hands trembled as she pulled out her phone and took pictures. She didn't touch it. Didn't remove it. That would alert whoever was watching. Instead, she stood up slowly, opened her car door like nothing was wrong, grabbed her bag, and walked back to the elevator. Her mind raced. How long had it been there? Days? Weeks? Someone knew where she lived. Where she went. Every move she'd made since taking this job. The elevator doors closed, and Belinda finally let herself breathe. She pulled out her phone and texted Blake, "They've been tracking me. Don't leave the building." His response came immediately, "How do you know?" "Tracker on my car. Professional. They know everything." A pause. Then, "Come back to my office. Now." When Belinda returned, Blake had already pulled up building security footage on his computer. He was scanning through parking garage cameras, looking for anyone who might have planted the device. "There," Belinda said, pointing at the screen. The footage showed a figure in a maintenance uniform approaching her car 3 days ago, Wednesday night, right after the emergency board meeting. The person crouched beside the vehicle for less than 30 seconds, then walked away. The camera angle didn't capture their face. "Can you enhance it?" Blake asked. "Not enough resolution." Belinda leaned closer. "But look at the uniform. That's not our maintenance company. The logo's wrong." Blake zoomed in. She was right. The uniform had a generic Build Tech Services patch, a company that didn't exist in their vendor database. "Someone dressed up to blend in," Blake said. "And security didn't question it." Belinda's voice was tight, which means either they didn't notice or they were told to look the other way. Blake pulled up the security guard schedule for that night. 2 guards on duty. One of them was a veteran employee who'd been with the company for years. The other was new. Hired 2 weeks ago. Marcus Webb, Blake read from the file. "Wait, isn't that the systems administrator whose tablet was used to access Andre's credentials?" Belinda finished. "Yeah, same name." Blake's jaw clenched. "How did I not see this?" "Because they were careful. They've been planning this for months, maybe longer. Building access, planting people, waiting for the right moment." Blake closed the laptop. "Tomorrow night, we end this." Belinda nodded. "Tomorrow night." But as she settled into the couch in Blake's office, trying to convince herself she'd be safe until morning, one thought kept circling through her mind. If they were willing to track her, threaten her, plant people inside the company, what else were they willing to do? Saturday morning came too quickly. Blake and Belinda hadn't really slept. They dozed in shifts, one always awake and watching the security feeds. By the time the sun rose over Chicago, they looked like survivors of a siege. But they had a plan. Fake files. A late-night shift. Belinda had spent Friday perfecting the bait, a second set of fabricated documents, even more tempting than the first. This time, it wasn't just an acquisition proposal. It was the company's entire strategic roadmap for the next 5 years. Product launches. Market expansion. Proprietary technology blueprints. The kind of information that would be worth millions to a competitor. She planted the files in a heavily encrypted folder, then deliberately weakened the encryption. Made it look like someone had tried to secure it, but failed. An irresistible target for anyone looking to steal corporate secrets. Then she added a tripwire. The moment anyone accessed those files, she'd know. And this time she'd added something extra, a hidden backdoor that would let her see exactly what the intruder was doing in real time. "He'll come tonight," Belinda said, reviewing the setup one final time. Saturday night. Buildings empty. Minimal security. Perfect conditions. Blake stood at his office window, watching the city wake up. "How do you know?" "Because that's what I would do." Belinda closed her laptop. "He took the bait once. But he knows we're watching now. He'll move fast, before we can tighten security. And if he doesn't come? Then we wait." "But Blake." She paused. "You need to be ready for what happens when we catch him. This won't be a conversation. It'll be a confrontation." Blake turned from the window. His face was drawn, exhausted, but his eyes were clear. "I'm ready." They spent the day preparing. Blake sent emails to the executive team about Monday's schedule, maintaining the illusion of normalcy. Belinda reviewed security protocols, positioned cameras, and made sure every angle of Andre's likely approach was covered. At 6 p.m., they ordered dinner from the Thai place down the street. They ate in Blake's office in silence, neither of them hungry but both needing the fuel. At 8 p.m., Belinda sent Blake home. "What?" Blake looked at her like she'd lost her mind. "No, we're doing this together." "You can't be here," Belinda said firmly. "If Andre sees you, he'll know it's a trap. But if it's just me, working late, it'll look natural. Expected. I'm not leaving you alone with him." You won't. Belinda pulled up a security app on her tablet. You'll be watching from your car in the parking garage, 2 floors down. If anything goes wrong, you call the police and come running. Blake hesitated. Trust me, Belinda said. This is how we catch him. Finally, Blake nodded. You have your phone? Always. And you're armed. Belinda reached into her desk drawer and pulled out a canister of pepper spray. Close enough. Blake wanted to argue, but he knew she was right. This had to look authentic. He left at 8:30, taking the elevator down to the parking garage. He texted her when he was in position, ready. Be careful. Belinda stayed. She settled into her office, lights on, door open. She pulled up meaningless reports on her computer, made it look like she was working on routine tasks. Anyone watching the security cameras would see exactly what they expected. The new cybersecurity chief putting in extra hours. The building settled into nighttime silence. The cleaning crew made their rounds and left by 10 p.m. The weekend security guard did his patrol at 10:30. After that, it was just Belinda. Alone on the 46th floor. She watched the clock. 10:45. 11 o'clock. 11:15. Her phone sat on the desk, Blake's security feed open. She could see him in his car, 2 floors below, watching his own monitor. 11:25 p.m. Belinda's tablet pinged softly. Someone had accessed the encrypted folder. Her heart rate spiked. She forced herself to stay calm, to keep typing, to not react. A second ping. The intruder was copying files. Belinda opened the hidden backdoor on her screen, a small window in the corner showing exactly what the intruder was doing. She could see the files being selected, compressed, prepared for transfer. Blake watched from the shadows. From his position in the parking garage, he had a clear view of the elevator bank. His phone showed Belinda's feed. He could see what she was seeing. At 11:30, Andre walked in. Blake's breath caught. There he was, his best friend, his business partner, stepping out of the elevator with a laptop bag slung over his shoulder. Andre moved quickly, purposefully. He didn't go to his own office. He went straight to the server room access point on the 46th floor. Blake texted Belinda, he's in the building. Server room. Belinda responded, I see him. Stay ready. Andre swiped his badge. The server room door unlocked. Belinda stood up from her desk and walked toward the hallway, her footsteps deliberately audible. She wanted him to know she was there. She wanted him to make a choice. As she rounded the corner, she saw Andre standing at the server room door, his hand frozen on the handle. He'd heard her. Their eyes met. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Andre smiled. It was a cold smile. A smile that said he knew exactly what was happening. Working late, Ms. Clark, he said. If you caught someone betraying you red-handed, what would you say first? Comment below. Belinda didn't flinch. She'd spent 15 years facing down threats far more dangerous than a corporate traitor with a guilty conscience. I could ask you the same question, Andre, she said calmly. But we both know why you're here. Andre's smile faltered. His hand slipped from the server room door handle. I'm the CTO, he said, recovering quickly. I have every right to access our systems. At 11:30 on a Saturday night? Belinda took a step closer. To download files you think are classified acquisition plans? Andre's jaw tightened. I don't know what you're talking about. Foxhound signature. NSA-grade encryption bypass. The tracker under my car. Belinda's voice was steel. You really think you belong here? Andre's mask finally cracked. The friendly executive vanished, replaced by something cold and calculating. You really think you belong here? He snarled. You're a janitor. A washed-up has-been who couldn't hack it in the real world. Blake gave you a pity job, and now you're playing detective. She's not playing, a voice said from behind him. Andre spun around. Blake stepped into the light. He emerged from the stairwell, phone in hand, every word of the last 3 minutes recorded. His face was a mask of controlled fury. 8 years, Andre, Blake said quietly. 8 years I trusted you. Andre's eyes darted between them, calculating odds, looking for exits. Blake, man, listen, this isn't what it looks like. Then what is it? Blake's voice rose. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you tried to destroy everything we built. Everything I built. Everything we built. Andre's composure shattered. I was there from day one. I wrote half the code that made Apex what it is. But who gets the magazine covers? Who gets called a genius? You. So you sold me out? I took what I was owed. Andre's hands balled into fists. Do you know what investors offered me? What competitors promised? Millions, Blake. Tens of millions. And all I had to do was give them access. To my company. My clients. My life's work. Andre laughed bitterly. Your company. Always your company. Even when I did the work, it was your vision. Your leadership. Your billion-dollar empire. He pointed at Belinda. And now you're replacing me with her? A cleaning lady. Blake stepped forward, his voice dangerously quiet. She belongs more than you ever did. The words hung in the air like a verdict. Andre's face twisted. You'll regret this. Both of you. You think you've won? You have no idea who you're dealing with. He bolted. Andre ran. He shoved past Belinda, sprinting toward the emergency stairs. But Blake had planned for this. The moment Andre's badge had accessed the server room, the building's security protocols had activated. Every exit required biometric authentication. Every door was locked. Andre slammed into the stairwell door. Locked. He spun toward the elevator. The display showed all cars disabled. It's over, Andre, Blake said, walking toward him. Security's on their way. FBI's been notified. Every file you stole, every transfer you made, we have it all. Andre backed against the wall, trapped. His eyes were wild, desperate. Blake, please. We can work this out. Partners, remember? I can fix this. You're done. The elevator chimed. Security guards emerged, followed by 2 federal agents in dark suits. They'd been waiting in the lobby, ready for Blake's signal. But Andre ran. But not fast enough. One of the guards caught him as he tried to make a last desperate dash for the stairs. Andre struggled, shouting, but it was over. As they cuffed him, Andre looked back at Blake one last time. The hatred in his eyes was pure, undiluted. You'll never prove all of it, he hissed. My lawyers will tear you apart. This will drag on for years. Blake met his gaze without flinching. Then let it drag. I'm not hiding anymore. They led Andre away. Belinda stood beside Blake in the empty hallway, watching the elevator doors close on the man who'd almost destroyed everything. You okay? She asked quietly. Blake exhaled slowly. No, but I will be. Monday morning, Blake did something no CEO in his position was supposed to do. They didn't cover it up. He called a press conference. His lawyers had spent Sunday screaming at him through conference calls. The board had threatened emergency votes. His PR team had literally begged him to reconsider. Let us handle this quietly, his head of communications had pleaded. Settle with Andre. Sign NDAs. Protect the company's reputation. Blake had refused. No more covering up, he'd said. No more protecting people who don't deserve it. We're telling the truth. So at 10 a.m. on Monday, Blake Watson stood in front of 50 reporters in Apex Technologies' main conference room, with Belinda Clark at his side. They went live. Good morning, Blake began, his voice steady despite the cameras, the microphones, the weight of what he was about to do. I'm here to tell you about the worst week of my professional life, and why it might be the most important moment in this company's history. He told them everything. The cyber attack, the $6 billion loss, the insider betrayal, Andre Barry's arrest, the weeks of stolen data, the threats, the tracker on Belinda's car. And then he told them about Belinda. For 3 years, a woman with 15 years of NSA cybersecurity experience worked in this building as a janitor, Blake said, his voice thick with emotion. Not because she wasn't qualified. Not because she didn't apply. But because our hiring systems I built, couldn't see past her age, her race, her resume gap. He gestured to Belinda. This woman saved my company. She stopped a sophisticated attack that my $40 million security team missed. And she did it because nobody else was there to do it. The room erupted with questions. Mr. Watson, are you saying your CTO orchestrated this attack? Why didn't you report this immediately to federal authorities? Is Ms. Clark now in charge of your security division? Blake answered every question. Honestly. Completely. Press. Headlines. Lawsuits. The media frenzy was instantaneous. By noon, Blake's face was on every major news site. Billionaire CEO exposes betrayal. CTO arrested in $6 billion cyber heist. By evening, the story had evolved. From janitor to chief of security, the woman who saved Apex Technologies. Belinda's face appeared next to Blake's. Her story, the ageism, the racism, the resume rejections, became a rallying cry. Tech Twitter exploded. LinkedIn overflowed with posts about hidden talent, systemic bias, second chances. The lawsuits came fast. Andre's lawyers filed motions. Investors demanded answers. Competitors smelled blood and circled. But something else happened too. Applications flooded Apex's HR department. Thousands of them. From people who'd been overlooked, rejected, told they weren't the right fit. Engineers in their 50s. Brilliant minds who'd been pushed out of the industry. People who'd given up hope of ever working in tech again. "We want to work for a company that sees us," one email read. Another, "Thank you for telling the truth." The truth set them free. Within 2 weeks, the board voted unanimously to support Blake's leadership. The FBI's investigation vindicated every claim. Andre pleaded guilty to avoid trial, facing 10 years in federal prison. Apex's stock price plummeted initially, then surged to record highs as investors recognized what Blake had done. He hadn't just saved his company. He'd rebuilt it on something more valuable than code or capital. Integrity. And they made history. 6 months later, Forbes ran a cover story, "The Billion-Dollar Comeback: How Transparency Saved Apex Technologies." Time followed with Belinda Clark, the cybersecurity pioneer who refused to stay invisible. Industry conferences invited Belinda to keynote. She spoke at MIT, Stanford, tech summits across the country. Her message was simple but revolutionary. Talent doesn't expire at 40. Brilliance doesn't have a single color. And sometimes the person who can save your company is the one you never thought to hire. Blake implemented new hiring protocols. Blind resume reviews. Age-diverse interview panels. Skills-based assessments that ignored pedigree. Apex became the model other companies tried to copy. But for Blake and Belinda, the real victory was quieter. It was walking through the office and seeing a team that looked like the world, not just a narrow slice of it. It was the email from a 60-year-old engineer who got hired after 20 years of rejections. "Thank you for giving me a chance." It was knowing they'd told the truth when lying would have been easier. If you had the power to change one unfair system in your industry, what would it be? Comment below. 9 months after the breach, Blake asked Belinda to meet him in the server room. "Why?" she'd asked, suspicious. "Is something wrong with the systems?" "Just humor me," Blake had said with a smile. So at 9 p.m. on a quiet Tuesday, Belinda descended to basement level 3, keycard in hand, wondering what emergency Blake had discovered now. The server room looked different than it had that terrible night. The racks hummed with healthy green lights. New security protocols blinked on monitoring screens. Everything was clean, organized, alive. Blake stood in the center of the room, wearing a suit instead of his usual startup casual. His hands were in his pockets, and he looked nervous. "Blake." Belinda set down her tablet. "What's going on? Do you remember the first time we were down here together?" Blake asked. "Of course. I was terrified the whole system would crash before I could patch it." "I wasn't thinking about the systems," Blake said quietly. "I was thinking about how I'd spent 8 years building a company, and I'd never really seen anyone. Not the way I should have." Belinda's breath caught. "Blake." "That night, I was desperate. Broken. Everything I'd built was disappearing, and I couldn't stop it." Blake took a step closer. "And then you walked in. Not because you had to. Not because I deserved it. But because you saw someone who needed help, and you chose to help anyway." In the same server room where she saved him, Blake got on one knee. Belinda's hand flew to her mouth. "Oh my God." Blake pulled out a small velvet box. Inside was a ring, simple, elegant, a single diamond that caught the light from the server racks around them. "You didn't just save my company," Blake said, his voice cracking with emotion. "You saved me. You taught me what real strength looks like. What integrity means. What it means to see people, really see them." Tears streamed down Belinda's cheeks. "For 9 months, I've watched you transform this company," Blake continued. "You've built something I never could have built alone. You've given second chances to people who thought they'd run out of chances. You've shown everyone here what true leadership looks like. He took her hand. Belinda Clark, I don't want to just work with you for the rest of my life. I want to live with you, build with you, face whatever comes next together. His voice dropped to a whisper. Will you marry me? The server room hummed around them, the same room where everything had almost ended, now witness to a new beginning. Belinda looked down at Blake, at this man who'd lost everything and found himself in the process. Who'd chosen truth over convenience. Who'd chosen her when the world said she didn't matter. And this time, Belinda said yes. Yes, she whispered, then louder, yes. Blake stood and slipped the ring onto her finger. Then he pulled her into his arms, and they stood there in the cold heart of Apex Technologies, holding each other like they'd found something more valuable than any algorithm or billion-dollar deal. They'd found home. I love you, Blake said against her hair. I love you too, Belinda replied. Even though you proposed in a server room. Blake laughed, a real, genuine laugh. It felt right. This is where it all started. Where you trusted me. Where you saved me. They stayed there for a long time, surrounded by blinking lights and humming machines, planning a future that looked nothing like either of them had imagined a year ago. A future built on second chances. A future where invisible people became undeniable. A future that started with a janitor's cart and a failing company, and ended with two people who refused to accept the world's limits on who deserve to be seen.
Thanks so much for watching till the end. If this story moved you, you're going to love what's coming next. It's even more surprising and emotional than this one. Go ahead and click the story on your screen right now, and see you in the next story.